the great thing about attraction is that it's subjective.
I interpret attraction as things that make you memorable, things that make you stand out, things that people are going to immediately think of you
People who are prettier, they actually get up to 5 years less of a sentence compared to someone who may not be as pretty.
just by being more present than everybody else. You naturally become more likable. What's up, underdogs? In today's episode, we're going to be diving into how to become more attractive. Now, does that mean we're going to be talking about beauty tips for your next beauty pageant? Probably not. However, what we want to do is talk about how being more attractive can impact your professional and personal relationships in life.
Yeah, naturally, Robert, there are people who are just more attractive. And I've noticed this pattern. They live a better life, they drive better cars, they have better girls or guys, and it seems like there are more doors open to them. So I've always wondered about what is the one thing that makes people more attractive. So underdogs, we are extremely excited for this episode because if you listen until the very end, we're going to reveal the one tip that will make people fall madly in love with you. That is both online and in everyday life. Robert, I'm super excited for this one. I just wanted to touch base with you and see how have you been lately aside from crushing it.
Well, I've been doing great. I mean, literally just this morning, talk about, making yourself more attractive and wanting to look more attractive. I actually took a trip down to my local barber shop to get my hair cut. It was starting to get a little bit messy, and I figured, hey, let's make ourselves look a little bit sharper for our podcast interview today.
That is so funny because we didn't synchronize, but I trimmed my beard. And if for some reason people go and watch the first episode, they're gonna see this massive beard. And the first time that I went to a proper Republican Dominican barber shop, and I was very skeptical because I've never been there, and it's just by my house. And my Dominican friend goes there and he has a great hair and a great, styled beard. So I was a little bit like, oof, like, am I gonna get a good experience? So I cheated on my barber and I went there and I was like, wow, okay, this feels worse than cheating on anything else. And I was like, okay, like, how is gonna be my experience? And I'm just so happy. If you're watching this on YouTube, tell me, like, did they do a great job? Because what do you think, Robert?
I give it a
Look at that.
9 out of 10.
Look at the shape. Look at everything. So, anyway, that brings us also to an important point. Experimentation in life. So important, right? If you want to find, right, your style, whether that is your beauty style, whether that is how you look, whether that is your style when it comes to content online, whether that is your style of communication, it's important that you experiment and sometimes cheat on your barber, ideally.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because, similarly, like I go to my local barber shop, but I remember when I had my sister's wedding to go to a few months ago. I actually got got the full works. I literally had like, my hair cut,
Mm,
my beard trimmed. I even had like some sort of like,
yeah.
I don't know what they were doing to my face, but it's like hot towel massage or something like that, like everything. Um,
Oh,
and like,
fancy.
I literally walked away from it like feeling like an absolute king. So one thing as well, immediately talking about, feeling more attractive is like, yeah, experiment, but also, like try and spice it up a little bit, try somewhere new, because you never know what you're going to experience. And I always find, especially when it comes to your looks and when you're going to get like your next haircut or your next, trim or your makeup done, just trying something new, you end up realizing that different people style completely different. And so I'm like walking away with a
Mm.
completely different hairstyle to my normal, like never seen my beard being trimmed in such a way that looks so well kept. I'm like, huh, wow, okay, interesting. It's
Yeah.
new. I like it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And as we're going down this lane of these great metaphors when it comes to barbers, I was the first thing why I mentioned that I was extremely skeptical is I walked in and the youngest guy of them all, and he looked like he was 16, and he didn't
Hmm.
have a great beard, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do your beard." And I was like, okay. And I panicked a little bit because I was like, hey, he doesn't have a beard. He doesn't look like he has a lot of experience. He will be the one. Oh my God. Okay. So I quickly messaged my friend who goes there almost every week. I was like, hey, like, who's the good guy? He's like, the younger guy. The younger guy, he styles your beard in an incredible way. So his appearance, he didn't look like he was the guy who does it in a phenomenal way. And then totally surprised. I was so happy he spent an hour just on my beard, and it was just wow, this experience. So sometimes, right, the visual appearance of someone is deceiving. Don't judge the book by its cover. And Robert, I want to lead the
Ooh,
conversation into precisely that. And it
yeah.
is, what is to you, how do you identify someone that is attractive? What are the
Hmm.
features of an attractive person?
Well, this is it. I love that you mentioned that kind of like little side story where the person who you go to for the best beard trim is not necessarily the guy who you would think does the best beard trim. Because similar
Yeah.
experience, and I mean, maybe I'm being like a massive stereotype here, so we've got to watch out. However, I believe, and this is through personal experience, that all of the best barbers, and this is really for the men here, like the best barbers have no hair. Like, I've always experienced it that every single time, like the person who has done my hair to like an incredible level, like they literally they've always had no hair, and I'm like, yeah, like maybe it's a thing that like because they don't have the hair, it really they're kind of like, hey, like I want to put that expression to make other people's hair look
Mm.
absolutely incredible. So like it's a very interesting dynamic and a very interesting experience that I've gone through, that all of my hairdressers have had no hair. And so to roll back on uh your point on kind of what makes somebody attractive, what do I feel makes someone attractive? Well, as you rightly said, never judge a book by their cover. What they look like has nothing to do with what makes them attractive, and it's in fact, I would say, an identifying quality about that person that singles them out from everybody else, that brings something new to the table that you haven't really experienced with your current social group. So you often find that, you have that one friend who is like insanely intelligent, and there's you may not be able to put your finger on it at the time, but you're like, something about this person is just really interesting, really attractive. Like, I like spending my time with this person because I have conversations that feel really intellectual, and I feel smarter just talking with that person. And so it really does
Mm.
come down to those qualities that really make that person stand out from everybody else.
Yeah. And the great thing about attraction is that it's subjective. What is attractive to me, it may not be attractive for Robert or for you, underdog. So, therefore, you can expand attraction to so many realms. And attraction can be found in the way you communicate, in the way you look, in the way that you speak, in the jokes that you make. Maybe you are, someone who has incredible humor. And it can also be in your physical appearance. So that was a question that I had is, does physical appearance in itself contributes to the overall attraction level of a person? And I know this can be a little bit controversial, but I would love to hear it from you.
I would say yes. And to clarify on that answer, that doesn't mean that I mean your facial features. What I mean is that, like, and well, yes, your facial features too, because there are things about a person that you may not necessarily immediately find attractive, but over time start to actually become more attractive. Like, for example, let's say someone has like a big nose. And immediately when you first see it, your gut reaction is to judge a book by its cover. Oh my God, that person has a big nose. But then when you get to know that person, it does start to become an identifying factor that, immediately like kind of just helps you memorize that person. And so you're like, oh yeah, the guy with the big nose, that actually, and it works. So like you might not actually think, oh, hey, like being called like that you have a big nose is a great thing, but actually you're already infinitely more memorable than somebody who just has like average features. So physical appearance really
Mm.
does play a part in being more attractive, because I interpret attraction as things that make you memorable, things that make you stand out, things that people
Ooh.
are going to immediately think of you. So somebody who has, an interestingly shaped nose. I'm going to use a really good example here. For example, Owen Wilson, the famous actor, he has like a very odd shaped nose, and everybody comments on it, and yet that makes him so memorable, and it really grows on you. You're like, oh yeah, actually, he is good looking, and yes, he does have an odd shaped nose, but that's what makes him unique.
Ah, I love that. And you know why I love that? Because I didn't, Owen Wilson. I was like, who is Owen Wilson? And then it just took me a second to Google it. I was like, I know that guy. I know who he is. I've seen that nose. Right. And it's so funny that you mentioned it, because the one thing that I would say is, as bad as this may be, or as good as it may be, but pretty privilege, it's real. Okay, in fact, studies show that it affects so much with the way that we get away with things if we're prettier, that people who are prettier, they actually get up to 5 years less of a sentence compared to someone who may not be as pretty. So it even affects on that level, right? And it was actually, there was a very interesting study. There was a Netflix show, I think it was called 100 versus 1 or something, and they were doing experiments, and they put 100 people in a room and 100 people in another room, and they showed them pictures of people who are considered stereotypically prettier, more attractive, and pictures of people who are not considered so attractive. And they committed the exact same crimes. But the people who were stereotypically more attractive, they actually got way smaller sentences by about roughly 5.6 years, which is crazy to me. Mind
That's
blowing.
also crazy to me. It's a little bit shocking, and I mean,
It's
for
shocking.
the listeners right now, I don't know, like how do you feel about that? I mean, on YouTube, if you're on YouTube right now, I'd love to see comments from you talking about this, like what you actually feel about this. Because I mean, me personally, I think that it is not only shocking but disgusting. Disgusting that how someone looks would actually lower or heighten their
Mm.
sentence. Like that should never be a factor. However, it does tend to be a thing. People are
Pretty
biased.
privilege.
Yeah, pretty privilege. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's also known as the in psychology as the halo effect. Things that naturally things or people that naturally look good, are more attractive, more appealing, and more sought after by everybody else. Because if it looks good, people naturally tend to think it is good, and so this is really important to think about. And this does not single out anyone who might be thinking right now, well, I don't look like Jessica Alba, so I don't want, I'm never going to be able to, like, get some of this pie. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the best facial features. It can mean that you have the best dress sense out of everybody else in your social group. It could
okay,
mean that you create the most
yeah,
phenomenal designs on like your social media. Attraction is not necessarily only singled out to people who look good. It can be a quality that you just happen to do better than everybody else. So again, talking about someone who is like, crazy intelligent, you know, you would immediately think of them like he's the most intelligent or she is the most intelligent person in the room, and immediately you become instantly more likable because people are specifically looking for that quality in you.
absolutely. And underdogs, the important thing that you should pick up from this conversation is that, first of all, as we mentioned, attraction is subjective. The second thing is that if you are naturally not gifted physically, okay, and that is for you to determine, okay, and that is for, however people feel about themselves, it's a totally different topic that we're going to cover in further episodes, okay, is that self-confidence, okay. But even if you're not physically attractive, you don't have great humor, okay, you don't have a specific talent, all that matters is that you pick up a skill or pick up an area of your life and then expand in that direction. Take focus and truly go after. Okay, so many people think that we're born attractive or we are not born attractive. Now, I just want to stop you right there. Okay, attraction is built over the years. If you were to see 14-year-old Alec, listen, and even let's go back a little bit at when I was 12 or even 10. The best song on the radio was uh, Justin Bieber, Baby, and everyone has listened to the song. And you know, I used to have this long Justin Bieber hair, and I used to think, hey, I am so sexy, so attractive at the age of 12. I was like, oh, listen, the Justin Bieber style, so good. And then I look at those pictures, I'm like, oh my goodness. And, frankly, my style was just not there. But I was always the funny guy. So I was always, right, compensating that lack of style that at the moment I thought I had a lot of style. Right now I look back and I'm like, wow, you were looking terrible. But I was so humorous and people were laughing in my presence. So always pick up the area that you know that you dominate in and strengthen that, expand on it. And then the areas that you want to improve in, your supposed weaknesses, how can you pick up a habit that will make you more attractive? So, Robert, I want us to cover here for the people what are a couple of habits that they can pick up, okay, that they can start working towards that will make them more attractive. So, I'll start with one of my favorites and something that has impacted a lot of areas in my life. But I started recently working out. When I say recently, I've been working out for about 9 months, and before that, I used to just not think that it's important at all. But as we work the majority of our time in our offices in front of our PCs, you notice that, hey, there is a strong lack of energy. There is a strong, even a variety in the routine, and not moving your body. It is, basically so bad health wise, mentally. And when I started working out, even after a month, I could immediately see myself as a more attractive individual. Not only that, but I started getting more compliments from family and friends. And it's so interesting because later on, I saw it from a dating coach called Blaine Anderson. She was speaking on her Instagram how actually going and working out and moving your body just 20 minutes more every day makes you instantly more attractive after 21 days. So that was like a proven study that, like, hey, just moving your body 20 minutes more makes you more attractive in your eyes and in people's eyes. So, Robert, I'm curious, what would be another habit that people can start developing in order to to get more attractive, in order to build that attractiveness? And we're going to cover how people can start working towards those.
Yeah, for sure. So, from my side, my number one piece of advice would be to show genuine interest in others. If you
Hmm.
want to be more attractive in the eyes of a potential partner, a group of friends, then make an effort to show that you're interested in them, because naturally you're going to show up more in their lives. And there's a rule in psychology called the mere exposure effect. And just by being more present than everybody else, you naturally become more likable. And so showing up in a way that is just genuine care for a friend, genuine care for a group of people, checking in every morning to say, "Hey, good morning. Hope hope that you have like a wonderful day ahead. Any exciting plans?" Yeah, it's simple as that. You've shown up once already in
Hmm.
their day, and then pop in the afternoon. Hey, hope all's good. Hope you're having a lovely afternoon. Like, oh, there he is again. This guy really cares about me. This is really nice. And then when they go to bed, wish them a good night. So you're showing up on three of the most essential parts of anybody's day. And you do that over time. People will remember you, they will think about you, and you will instantly become more likable and more attractive just by being in their life.
I love that. And for the people who are not seeking a relationship, but are seeking more business, the
Yeah.
same concept applies. If you show up more on social media, you will trigger the mirror exposure effect. You will be more present in front of people's eyes. Therefore, they're going to naturally start liking you more. And the same happens when you want to have more deals closed, when you want to create more sales, when you are running a marketing campaign and you want people to buy from you. They're not just going to buy the first time you show up. You need to be there consistently and you need to be showing genuine interest and speaking about the benefits that they're going to have by working with you. Being an underdog, as we often say, is an advantage because underdogs always have genuine interest in helping other people. And that is because we've been in the position of having people who don't believe in us, who don't trust us, and we need to work twice as hard, but we don't mind doing it. And so when it comes to personal relationships and when it comes to you excelling in the caring department, this is something that you can do. As Robert said, show genuine interest and care for people, have their best interest at heart. right? That was phenomenal. That was a phenomenal habit for people to pick. And the third one that I'll leave, and then we can speak. How can we improve? Right? You're saying have genuine interest. I'm telling people, start moving your body a little bit more, right? But how can we start? So I want us to wrap it up in three habits because this one is very important, and it is always pick up a skill or a hobby in which you're going to be improving consistently. Ideally,
Mm.
it is a hobby that you can do for a long time, or it is a skill that is a high income skill. Okay. Now, if you do that, you're naturally going to become more attractive. Reason being, there's not a lot of people who have high income skills. There's not a lot of people that necessarily have picked up the same hobby as you. Therefore, it makes you a more interesting person. Hey, look at that person. They started a business. Right? Look at that person. They're running, a brand agency. Right? Look at that person. They're an artist. Right? There is a lot to speak about with you.
Mm.
What do you think
I,
about that one, Robert?
I love that, Alec. And a very quick follow up question that I'd want to ask is like, let's say that I'm someone who honestly doesn't know how to find a skill that I excel at. What would be some advice to someone who has no clue whatsoever where to start? How could they identify a skill that could turn into a high income skill or could be a skill that would eventually make them more attractive? How would I go about finding that?
Hmm. Okay, let's collaborate on this one. And
Mm,
what we're going to do right now is break down a Japanese concept called ikigai. Okay, and for everyone who is celebrating the new year, the lunar new year, happy lunar new year to you too. I just want to use this moment to thank our audience from Asia. There is a lot of you who are celebrating the new year today, and this week's, depending on when this gets uploaded, and happy new year to you. Now, Robert, let's break down the Japanese ikigai concept, okay? And I'm going to start with the first point, and it's if you want to find that skill that you want to learn, it has to have a minimum pleasure that you experience from them, okay? This is your passion, okay? You need to have a passion that you pick up, okay? Something that you can do on a consistent basis.
mm,
Now, oftentimes, passion is born by the action you take. That doesn't mean that, oh, I love eating and sleeping. Well, underdog, that is probably not going to be the skill that you master because, first of all, that is a very selfish skill. There is no like demand, like, hey, that's my talent. I just eat and sleep. Uh, and then you wouldn't be able to monetize that. Eventually, right? If skills should be used for you to live a better lifestyle or to at least deliver more impact into the world. And therefore, you need to have that potential. So, Robert, if passion is the one pillar, what is another pillar from the Ikigai concept that you would like to cover?
yeah, so once you kind of have an idea of something that you love, the next point that you want to cover is what the world needs. Okay, so this is what other people need in their life. A skill that they need, a skill that makes them happier. It enables them to achieve something quicker, faster, more efficiently. So yeah, okay, so you love something. An example would be that, hey, okay, I love art, I love designing things. So the next part that you would look at when it comes to what the world needs is like, okay, what about this art is needed? What does it do for other people, not just myself? Because art comes
Mm,
from self expression. Okay. So it's like, hey, I love it because I'm able to express myself. How can you now translate that into what the world needs? Well, maybe that particular art piece expresses something that a vast majority of people also feel. And so when that particular buyer wants to buy that particular art piece, they immediately resonate with the story that you're sharing behind that piece of art, about the emotions that brought this piece of art to life. Now it becomes something that they need because it expresses who they are, not just who you are, but who other people are too. And so that
I
desire
love that.
is then formed. So we've
I
covered
love that.
what you love, and we've also
Yes.
covered what the world needs. So Alec, looking at Ikigai, what's the next part, of this concept that's needed to really help you find a skill that you can leverage?
Yeah. So realistically, I kind of covered it slightly. And it's, what can you be good at? Right? What is something that you're generally good at? What is something that you have expertise in? And you can very easily find that by, hey, what are people asking you questions about? What are your friends always coming for you to? What's the advice that they ask from you?
Mm.
Right? And once you understand, hey, the people are always asking me about like their relationships, and it's really funny because I have so many friends who they're single, and they're like, people always ask me for relationship advice, and I'm single, and I always give the best advice to other people, but then I either don't apply it or so. At the very end, you need to figure out is what are you good at, and that comes, okay, together from the passion and from the expertise that you have amassed previously in your life, right? And the final thing is, right, you covered
Very
what the
quickly
world
before we
needs.
jump into
Yeah.
that, Alec, very quickly,
Yeah.
just to add to that point of what you're good at, because again, some people do lack that self-awareness to be like, I'm
Mm,
actually really good at this and I didn't know it,
yeah.
is to really listen to other people, listen to your friends, and listen to the comments that they have about you, because it can be very like a natural reaction to someone who is like very humble to immediately pass off any comments that come their way. And so they never really find that something that they're really good at because they are too humble for their own good. And so really listen to people, and when someone says, hey, you're really good at that, learn to take a compliment and also think about what that could potentially mean to you. That could be a skill that you are actually great at. So yeah,
I
you
love
might
that.
be an artist and are really good at drawing, and someone says, whoa, that drawing is phenomenal. Before you go, it's okay, like, think about that and be like, if you're not quite sure
Maybe it
about
is.
where you're at in life
Ah.
and if you found that skill yet, maybe that's the one.
Yeah, and I must say, like, when you go through life, it can take time for you to
Yeah.
truly understand what you're great at. And oftentimes it's not as concrete as, oh, he's just great at drawing. He's great at drawing what?
Mhm.
Okay? You should always dig deeper, right? Like, drawing what? Like, is it drawing cartoon characters? Is it drawing sunrises? I don't know, right? But find the specificity, find what makes you unique in people's eyes. And
Mm.
the final point, right, is exactly that, what you can get paid for, right? So how can people find out, right? Maybe they love what they do. Maybe they get complimented and maybe they're good at it. And maybe the world needs that, right? But how can they find out, Robert, if they can get paid for it too?
Very good question. What I would look at immediately is in terms of like number of people interested. So you can generally tell about something that you can be paid for when, for example, you take what you love and what you're good at to social media,
Mm.
because when you love something a lot and you start just like sharing it with the world just by like putting up an Instagram post, for example, you often will see that people are then asking you questions about it. If there is demand there, people will be like, "Hey, like I love this drawing. Could you do one for me? Like, I really love that your self portraits, for example, are absolutely phenomenal. I'd love for you to be able to do a portrait of me and my family." And then you're like, "Okay, that's interesting. Someone's shown like an interest in that. Now, what is the demand at a bigger level so that you keep posting?" And then you notice that it's not just one person, but five people have now asked you.
Mm.
Another example could be like, hey, if you're doing, if you're singing on TikTok and you notice that loads of people are like, talking to you about, hey, you should like, your voice is incredible. Like, why haven't you
Angelic.
signed a record label already? So to summarize and really help you find what you can be paid for, one of the easiest ways to do it is to take it online and see what the world thinks about what you love and what you
Mm.
believe you're good at. Because you're going to cover those
Oof.
two boxes of what the world needs and what you can be paid for.
Oof. I love that. So let's do a quick recap, okay? Super important. Okay. What are you good at? What do you love doing? What does the world need? Can you make real impact? This is extremely important because you want to also have a self of satisfaction and
Yeah.
a bigger mission than just right laying in bed, right? Like, okay, maybe you're good at it and maybe it feels amazing and you love doing it. Now, can people pay you? Is the final point. I don't know if you find, hey, that you can just take naps and people pay you for it. I don't know, maybe, right? Like so many people, they're like, I love sleeping. Can you make money with it? Yes. Okay, fantastic. Now, this will naturally help you to find exactly what could be the one thing to make you a very attractive and sexy underdog, right? And that at the very end, is exactly what we wanted to cover today. And it's how you can find that one thing. And finally, to wrap up this episode, in which I hope that you got plenty of gems, is we want to find out how you can start those habits, right? So, right? What is the defining factor? And honestly, I have to give a little bit of credit here. I just listened to a podcast episode from Ed Milet, and it was exactly about habits. And I wish I'll tell you by the end of the interview, by the end of the podcast, who the person interviewed was. But they were speaking precisely about the fact that habits are formed by cues and rewards, right? So every single habit comes with a cue. And so, therefore, if you were to start a new habit, you would establish a cue. A cue could be drinking coffee in the morning, right? That could lead for you to start work, right? I make my coffee, I start work. Okay, and then you need to have a reward, right? Hey, I started work, right? So if I work for half an hour, I can get myself another coffee. Or I can get myself, a Snickers,
Mm.
right? Or I could, what is that reward? I could like watch 10 minutes of Netflix. And he was covering beautifully the concept of habits.
Is this
And speaking
Atomic
about,
Habits by
yeah,
James
Robert, you
Clear?
have a question.
Yeah, yeah, just very quickly,
Oh
like,
man,
is this from the
I
book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
no, I don't believe it was by Atomic Habits. It was,
Ah,
man,
because it
I
sounds
I
so
will find
familiar,
it by
and
the
you
end
were like,
because I
"Oh,
want to
I need
give.
to explain who it is," and I was like, "Oh, maybe it's that because it sounds exactly like it."
Oh man, I will take a look. I will take a look
Yeah.
because the author was incredible, and I do want to give proper credits. I listened to it this morning exactly, and frankly, Ed Milet is just so great that every single episode I'm like absolutely wow, like this is incredible.
Mm.
But it wasn't. So it was Charles Duhigg. Okay,
Ah.
so Charles Duhigg, and I just want to cover this incredible concept that he had. He explained it precisely with, and full credit, by the way. He has a book that he covers all of this in, but it was just so interesting to me. He mentioned how they did a study with rats, and they put them in a maze, and they did exactly that. There was a sound cue, okay, like the door opens to the maze, and there was a reward. There was like a piece of chocolate at the end, at the other end. And then they noticed that, hey, the first time that they put the thousand rats, they were a little bit confused, right? It took them longer. As they progressed through, right, they started getting quicker and quicker to the reward, right? And at the very end, right, they would experience, like, oh my god, that satisfaction when they got the reward. But what was interesting is that when they did it several times, their brain switched off the middle part. So they would get the cue. There would be a little bit of a spark, neurological spark, but in the middle, until they reach the reward, they would be on habit mode. And that tied up with exactly what Robert covered, and it's that 45% of the things we do on a daily basis, we don't even realize that they're habits. So you guys are already doing so many habits. And if you wanted to start a new habit, you would need to establish a cue. Okay, if you want to
Mm.
go to the gym, have gym clothes next on your bed. Okay, so when you wake up, you put your clothes on, you're in go mode. Okay, and you can set up several cues. Right, that was just fantastic. And then set yourself up a reward. Hey, after I go to the gym, right, I'm just going to have a fantastic meal and do it. And this way, you're going to start building up the habit. I go, that's my cue, that's my reward. So that was just like such a phenomenal concept that tied up extremely well with our podcast episode that I wanted to mention in. And now,
Mm,
my
I love
question
that.
is,
And,
Robert,
that gives me a really good
yeah,
idea for a next
what's
podcast,
your
which is,
experience?
oh, I was
Yeah, I
just going to
wanted,
say, uh, repeat the question.
yeah, I just wanted to ask you, what is your experience when it comes to starting new habits, right? Like what's your go to? And you probably, now that I've told you this, you would realize that you have cues.
Yeah, 100%. Like, so I'm trying to think of like a new habit that I've actually started because actually, like, I haven't started any new habits in a while because for me, like, I think I like what I'm doing right now, so I don't need to invite
Yeah.
anything new. However, I think about my most recent new habit, which was to, start eating healthier because I ate okay,
Hmm.
right? I ate okay. However, I wanted to eat healthier because I never used to get my five a day, right? There ain't no chance in hell I would ever get it. And
Oh,
so I needed something to say,
yeah.
this is how you start. So my cue, as you just mentioned, my cue was to say, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sign up to a company called HelloFresh. And a part of their motto is that they do really help you eat like way healthier. And within the majority of their meals, you tend to get your 2 or 3 out of your five a day into your meal. So I'm like, huh, okay. So this now, every time I get the gigantic box of like HelloFresh meals, that's my cue. I know I'm ready to start eating healthier. And so that really like
Yeah.
helped me and like looking at that kind of like framework because I am slightly familiar with the building habits framework. As you said, there's like a cue, there's like a, I think, a time frame or something like that, and then there's like a reward. Um, and especially with the reward part, I mean, the reward for building this habit is that I just get to eat good food that tastes absolutely awesome. So like we all know and love the pleasures of good food, and so when you're cooking a really nice meal and the flavor's amazing, and there's also the other reward as well, is the satisfaction that I actually made it myself. So this is me
Yeah,
developing my
yeah,
skills as like in
100%.
cooking. So I'm like, hey, I'll do what I
100%.
want.
That was one of the things, right? The satisfaction that you feel
Yeah,
from doing the activity
yeah,
could be the reward, or allowing yourself to eat a Snickers because you just had a salad or you just worked out. It's
yeah,
also a reward. So yeah, Charles Duhigg, incredible. By the way, HelloFresh is not sponsored. Okay, this was a genuine advice that, like, hey,
yeah.
they're awesome, and Robert has been telling me all about them. And so it sounds like it's a phenomenal way for you to start eating healthier, if that is, right, a habit that you want to pick up, right? So that's
Absolutely.
that's phenomenal, brilliant. And I feel like, just to keep it extremely practical, if you want to start a new habit, right, establish a cue and a reward, right? What would you do every morning or every day at noon or every night, right? That will put you in go mode, new habit, right? And then what would be the reward at the very end that you're going to pick up from that? And with this, you're going to be able to start. Then, if you stick up for roughly what I like to say 66 days, technically you would have a habit for life. And listen, it's fantastic because you can become a very attractive underdog very quickly. Just imagine picking one new habit every 70 days, right? You would end up with 6 to 7 habits at the end of the year that are extremely healthy that you can carry on with you in 2024. And you are going to crush it, underdog. We hope that this episode has been fantastic and very useful for you. Uh, so we're going to be looking forward to seeing you in many other episodes, and this is exactly what we cover for you, right? Is how can you get a better life starting from a position of disadvantage and not having perhaps that trust that you deserve, okay? So even when no one believes in you, just know that we do. We believe in you.